Okay, let's be honest for a second. If you've been feeling like you're constantly running on empty, literally just pushing through a thick fog of cognitive fatigue day after day, this explainer is going to completely change how you view your own biology. Today, we're taking a deep, cinematic journey into the neuroscience of burnout, chronic stress, and the absolute game-changing power of somatic grounding. We aren't just talking about generic stress management here. We are exploring the actual architecture of overwhelm. So let's dive right into this. Have you ever been sitting at your desk, just staring blankly at a screen, and suddenly felt this bizarre, almost out-of-body sensation? Like your mind is suspended in this state of high alert, but your physical body is just completely immobilized? Look, that visceral, stuck feeling, it's not a lack of willpower. Not at all. It is a very real biological reality of modern cognitive fatigue. When we push ourselves past our absolute limits in high-stress environments, our brains simply hit a wall. What you're actually experiencing in those moments is a mild form of dissociation. It really does feel exactly like you're watching your own life from the outside, doesn't it? That's the classic freeze response in action, usually accompanied by this constant, low-level hum of cortisol in your system. And I really want to remove any shame right here. This is literally just your nervous system trying its absolute best to protect you from what it perceives as an overwhelming threat. Your brain is temporarily unplugging to shield you from the impact. Section 1. The Architecture of Overwhelm. When the mind disconnects. Let's look at how our intensely demanding modern work cultures actually trigger these out-of-body experiences. Now, what's really interesting here is how our always-on work culture effectively tricks our biology into believing we're under constant physical threat. We're looking at the early warning signs of a nervous system that has reached its absolute limit. So when you feel foggy, emotionally flat, or you suddenly realize you have literally no idea how the last hour just passed, that is your brain yanking the emergency brake. It's a clear sign of a system that's completely overloaded by the sheer volume of processing it's trying to manage. To truly understand why this happens, we have to look at the biopsychosocial model. Pain, tension, and anxiety, they are deeply, deeply intertwined. Psychological stress, like, say, anxiety about a massive upcoming presentation, actually manifests physically in your body. It often shows up as muscle burning, especially in highly emotionally responsive areas like your pelvic floor. So the social pressure of your environment creates this psychological fear, which then translates into real biological tension. It's all connected. Moving on to Section 2, Neuroscience of the Freeze, the Brain on Burnout. Let's shift gears and look at the biological mechanics behind these exact feelings. So during periods of chronic stress, a specific network in your brain called the default mode network, or DMN, goes into overdrive. Now, the DMN is normally responsible for just automatic mind wandering, but under intense stress, it becomes an absolute hotspot for negative rumination. It creates this vicious, self-reinforcing loop of internal brain noise and distress. It's the exact reason why, when you're completely exhausted and finally lie down in bed to sleep, your brain suddenly turns on a highlight reel of your biggest worries. It makes true relaxation feel literally impossible. So the crucial point is this concept known as a prefrontal takeover. When the fear center of your brain, the amygdala, is just firing totally out of control, you can intentionally hijack your own biology. By heavily demanding cognitive resources for logical, sensory processing, you force the activation of your prefrontal cortex. This is your executive center, and it basically exerts top-down control, essentially telling that panicked fear center to just quiet down. And sensory grounding is exactly the mechanism that kicks off this takeover. By consciously and deliberately engaging our physical senses, we physically break that self-reinforcing anxiety loop. We're forcing the brain to shift away from that state of internal panic and historical trauma, and we anchor it right back into objective, present-moment reality. All right, Section 3, the 5-4-3-2-1 protocol, a deep somatic reset. Let's look at this incredibly powerful, neurobiologically backed method to downregulate your entire nervous system. Now, before we even start the countdown, the posture prep is absolutely key. Go ahead and sit with your feet flat on the floor. Take a nice, deep belly breath. Now, initiate what clinical researchers actually call the pelvic drop, just visualizing your pelvic floor widening out like ripples in a pond. There's a totally fascinating biological connection here that I want you to try right now. Just part your teeth slightly. Notice how that instantly relaxes your jaw, which in turn signals your diaphragm to lower and naturally relaxes the pelvic floor. It's this coordinated somatic piston that physically releases all that muscle guarding we talked about. Okay, now we begin the descending countdown. 5. Acknowledge 5 things you can visually see. The real goal here is creating a high cognitive load. So don't just say chair. Describe the specific texture of the fabric, the exact shade of the color, the way the light is hitting the curve of the armrest. You want to heavily load your brain's cognitive capacity so there is literally no processing power left over for your anxiety. 4. Acknowledge 4 things you can physically touch. Let's just slow the pacing down a bit here. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Really feel the exact texture of your clothing, or the firm, solid pressure of the ground right beneath your feet. By focusing heavily on these tactile, physical sensations, you're actively disrupting your brain's internal hypervigilance. 3. Acknowledge 3 things you can hear. And this brilliantly illustrates how tuning into external ambient sound actively pulls your neurological resources far away from those internal, catastrophic thoughts. Listen closely for the hum of an air conditioner, maybe the distant sound of traffic outside, or even just the steady rhythm of your own breathing. 2. Acknowledge 2 things you can smell. Now, smell is highly unique because it relies on the olfactory bypass. Unlike your other senses, olfactory signals travel directly to the amygdala, which is your brain's emotional processing center. Providing a sudden sensory shock with a really strong scent, like coffee, peppermint, or citrus, can just instantly interrupt those deep-seated trauma loops. And finally, 1. Acknowledge 1 thing you can taste. Just notice a lingering flavor in your mouth right now, or take a slow, mindful sip of water. This final step completes the descending hierarchy and fully solidifies your brain's return to a state of complete safety and objective reality. Let's move to section 4 and see how this builds. The 3-3-3 rapid reset. Immediate action for acute panic. This is a much faster, more agile tool for those high-stress situations. It's really vital to understand the difference here. The 5-4-3-2-1 method we just did provides subacute stabilization. It requires a high cognitive load, and it's absolutely perfect for deep resets and resolving dissociation. But what if you're moments away from public speaking or suddenly caught in an acute panic attack? You need a low cognitive load. The 3-3-3 rule is your rapid 1 to 2 minute relief. You need to know exactly which biological hack to deploy based on your environment and your stress level. So the 3-3-3 rule is super simple. Name 3 things you can see, name 3 sounds you can hear, and crucially, move 3 parts of your body. Shrug your shoulders, roll your ankles, maybe wiggle your toes. This final step is the real key here. It provides active proprioceptive feedback, which literally forces motor cortex activation. This instantly breaks the physical immobility that so often accompanies that intense freeze response. And the results? They're totally undeniable. A study published in the Journal of Anxiety Disorders actually showed that sensory grounding techniques significantly reduced acute anxiety symptoms in 73% of participants within just 2 to 3 minutes of practice. It's a remarkably rapid biological intervention. Moving to our final section, Section 5, Wiring a Resilient Brain, the Payoff of Presence. Let's talk about the long-term longevity and lifestyle optimization benefits of making these protocols a daily habit. Practicing these protocols daily isn't just about merely surviving your stressful moments. These grounding tools are incredibly powerful physical interventions. By consciously slowing yourself down, you stimulate your vagus nerve, which engages your parasympathetic rest and digest system. This naturally lowers your heart rate, reduces arterial blood pressure, and crucially, it increases heart rate variability, which is a primary marker of a healthy, resilient autonomic nervous system. It literally reduces the sensitivity of your central nervous system over time. Healing from burnout and chronic fatigue simply isn't about working harder or forcing yourself to relax. It's an active intervention. It's about intentionally feeding your brain neutral, objective sensory information so that it can finally let go of that protective tension. You are quite literally reallocating your attention and shifting your neural network connectivity. I want to leave you with this incredibly powerful concept from our source material. Grounding daily, even when feeling well, builds a reserve of emotional regulation that can be called upon during moments of distress. Thanks to the magic of neuroplasticity, every single time you practice grounding, you are reshaping your brain to default to calm rather than chaos. So the real question is, how will you reclaim your nervous system today? Take a deep breath, look around your room, and let's begin.